coming through? Is my screen coming through? Is my video coming through? Is
Yes.
my screen coming through, my video coming through, and my audio coming through?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Beth, for having me. Beth saw me at the Twin Cities Business Architecture Forum this past December and asked me to join you. So thank you very much for the offer for Metro State in the Institute for Professional Development. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Letha Lammers, for helping get me organized and get this set up and going. Today, I'm going to be talking about using business models to help organize for enterprise level change. How do we make sure that we leverage best practices, that we leverage lessons learned? How do we make sure if we're doing a big enterprise level thing that we're not dropping anything? There's lots of reasons that you may have enterprise level change. You may have it because you're merging with someone else. You may have it because you're bringing some business back in-house that used to be done outside. It could be for any number of reasons. So what I'm talking about here is just big, wide change happening at the business level. Of course, this can scale down to very small, but I'm going to be talking, the example that I have in mind as I'm talking about is something that we're working on. Everything you're seeing here today it's something I've done. It's something that's happening right now. So this is all pragmatic stuff. It's all real life stuff that has actually happened. So let's get going. The problem space in this case, just talk about the problem and talk about what I'm going to talk about. The effort is huge. There's multiple parallel paths of work. We've got about 20 pieces of work happening in parallel. We've got a ton of external stakeholders, a ton of internal roles, business processes, vendors, systems, and data moving everywhere. It's a tangle. We've got a web of technical integrations and cross-departmental workflows. And of course, it's all got to work on day one. It's all got to come together. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is how we have been leveraging our several business models to help define our overall scope, to help map our work streams. Now, by work streams, I mean like teams or projects or towers, whatever you might call them. How we're using it to track the vendors and the systems that compose our new platform, and how to ensure that we have end-to-end coverage. Honestly, I describe my job a lot as, let's just make sure we don't forget anything. How do we help make sure we haven't dropped anything? So we've developed something that we've called the model of models. It's an approach that helps eliminate gaps, minimize the overlaps, and identify where we need to work together. Now, I'm the Business Platform Implementation Director, which is my physically longest title I've ever had at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. And we are actually in an operating model revolution. We want to do this revolution planfully. We want to make sure that we are successful and using, again, best practices that we've done before and lessons learned. I've been there, just had my 30th anniversary. So that is an update from the last presentation. I did make it on 30. And I did spend 15 years in enterprise level architecture. I also play trombone. Now, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, if you haven't heard of it, we're a local health plan. We're the largest plan in Minnesota. About 1 in 3 Minnesotans have us. We have 2 million members throughout the country. Most of them are Minnesota, but a lot throughout the country. Now, just a couple things about us. We are not for profit. Doesn't mean we're a charity. Doesn't mean we lose money or have big sales, but we are not for profit. We take anything we make comes back into ourselves. And then we also have competitors. It's a competitive market out there. And so we have to make sure that we stay lean and keep things moving. We have a lot of pressure on us to keep going. We're also, all the Blues are franchises. We stand alone in the state of Minnesota. We can sell business to residents of the state of Minnesota, and we can sell business to businesses that are headquartered in Minnesota. So when Northwest Airlines was sold to Delta Dental, was sold to Delta Airlines, well, Northwest wasn't headquartered in Minnesota anymore. So we didn't have that business as part of our portfolio anymore. Moved out. Now, the model of models. What is that? What makes up the model of models? Now, in our case, we have 4 primary models. We have, I'll start just left to right. The blue model is in the middle. The stakeholder journey touch points. This is an outside in, and I'll get more into each one of these. A business capability model. This is a pretty typical capability model that says the who, what, why, where, and not, oh, sorry, people, process, technology, and metrics of what we do. We also went and created a business system model. Capability model didn't quite work. We had to build a new model for that. And then we have a new platform implementation model. This is based on lessons learned and best practices that we've done this before. Let's take those lessons and make sure we're implementing them again. We tie all these together. We link them to the work streams, and we link them to the components that compose our platform. First, before we get a lot further, let's talk about what a model is. A model is a simplification of reality. And let's face it, it's a simplification of a very complex subject. So in the case of a mountain, when you're talking about a mountain, there's lots of different ways to model a mountain or represent a mountain. If you're going skiing, the ski map is probably the best for representing the mountain. At least it tells you where the chairlifts are. The topographic map might be handy for skiing, but it doesn't tell you where the chairlifts are. All these other maps, none of them are wrong per se about what a mountain is, but all of them are different. All of them bring a different aspect to what a mountain is. So you can't pick any one model. If you pick one model to represent a mountain, you're going to be missing something. You're going to be missing some information. So it's probably best to have multiple representations of a mountain. And that's just, and that's the complex subject. Never mind health insurance. So that's what a model is, a simplification. A model of the structure of our models is that we have a 3-level hierarchy. And it really is just, it's just a hierarchical outline. At the top level, each of our models has usually 8 to 12 elements. Each of those top levels, those level 1s, has 3 to 9 level 2s. Each of those level 2s has 4 to 9 level 3s. And that gets you to a grand total of around 120 to 300 elements per model. Now, these are all just loose guidelines. I have some models that actually go above, 9 or 10, and but frankly, you want to keep things manageable because there's some characteristics of a good model that really, usability is huge when it comes to models. Other characteristics, it's got to have no gaps. It's got to be comprehensive. You don't want any holes. It's got to represent the whole, the outline. It's got to, ideally, it has no overlaps, that things are mutually exclusive within there. This one's a little tougher. But, at the very least, you have to have it in your head of how they're mutually exclusive. It's got to be stable. Change when maybe the business changes, but not. So we worked hard to get rid of organizational representations. If we had, one of the models you see we did back in 2014, 2015, and we're still using it because we didn't have organizational structure in there, because we didn't, we ignored the systems that we were using back then. If I had a system-based model, we'd still have Lotus Notes on there. And so, we just need, user collaboration as part of the model, not Lotus Notes or Microsoft Outlook as part of the collaboration model. And at the last, and probably the most important, a model has to be useful. It's got to be readable and practical. It's got to be, if it's got useful information in usable ways, then it will get used. Now, so let's talk about the models that are in the model of models. The stakeholder journey touch points, that is for the outside in experiences from the point of view of our members, our providers, our agents, our clients. And it's about 175 elements, 3 levels, just like we talked. So again, this is the outside in point of view. So looking at it from how a member interacts with us or how a provider acts with us. The business capability model describes what we do as kind of the inside in point of view on this, the activities we must be able to do to perform as a health plan. Now, this capability model, because we stripped out organization, because we stripped out kind of systemish references or system organization, let me put it that way, this business capability model would probably work for any other health insurance plan. And so it's always interesting to see other versions of the same thing. Now, when we did this before, we found that the business capability model was business centric. It really wasn't technical centric. And so much of what we do when we're bringing in a new operating model is system centric. So we created a business system model that describes the types, the categories of vendors, apps, databases, portals, infrastructure, blah, 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 that we need. It's very similar to the business capability model. In fact, we did that intentionally, but it's not the same. And finally, the platform implementation model. This is based on lessons learned and best practices. This is all the activities we have to be able to do in order to successfully transform our operating model, transform our systems and our organizational structures and our processes. So this is literally how to do this type of thing. So those are the four models. The two other pieces, the work streams. The work streams are parallel paths of work. We have about 20 of them or so. Some people call them tracks, towers, projects, but they're all happening simultaneously. So let's make, when you have that many things moving, you don't want, it's easy for gaps to show up because I thought you were doing that. I thought you were doing that. Or it's easy to have overlaps show up, two people trying to do the same thing. To be most efficient, you want the 20 work streams working in parallel and happy. Now, and then finally, the components. A component is any vendor, system, data store, etc. that when combined, create our technical operating platform. So let's talk about how these models were used, and then I'll get into each one. I'll get a little more detail. So used for program scope, work stream scope, platform composition, and I've got some bonuses at the end. So let's talk about program scope. One of the first things we did, and we did this a couple of years ago, actually, is that we walked through each of these three models here, and we did what we called model tuning. For this particular line of business, for this particular scope that we had in mind, well, Blue Cross has a lot of lines of business. We have lots of things, but for this particular line that we were focused on, we went through and tuned each one. We have a big Excel spreadsheet. We looked at each element and said, how is it relevant? What is needed? And we sat there for a couple of months with a few knowledgeable SMEs. I mean, it wasn't every day for every month, but calendar time, it took a long time. We walked through each one and did basically an initial documentation of the high-level needs and features. What, for this element, what is relevant to this? What is relevant for this particular thing that we were interested in? And we did this prior to any RFPs. We did this prior to even making a decision that we wanted to do. This helped inform really the next part, program scoping. It really helped inform what was in scope versus out of scope. We used not only the model tuning, but all the models to go through and say, what is relevant for us? What do we want to try to change? And what are we going to just plain old ignore? Now, sometimes elements of the models were kind of partial or had to be broadly interpreted. If you're doing, sometimes you have clear sales, you're selling to directly to a member, you're selling directly to a business. Other times you're working with maybe a governmental unit who gives you your membership. So, the sale is an RFP every few years, something like that. So all of this, the scoping helped us communicate our needs to the RFP candidates that we eventually had. And of course, this RFP was big, it's enterprise and scope. So it was huge. So it was really important that we had this done. Super helped with sizing, planning, and implementation execution. So it really helped get us get us going. So this helped us get organized even before we had to jump and start going.
Say, Todd,
Yeah.
there is a question related to the slide you were just talking about. This person is wondering if you have aligned the BCM model to the business systems model.
So in structure, yes. In structure, the business capability model and the business system model look a lot alike. So in the business capability, in fact, I used the same numberings and the same names at the highest level. And then after that, made it a little different. So yeah, we have them, they look the same, they look a lot, but let's face it, a business capability probably needs multiple systems in order to achieve their different system types to achieve their capability. So there is, it's kind of a many-to-many relationship between the two. So we haven't gone through and directly done the links, but I intentionally made the models so they're awfully close. So you look at the two and you get it. All right. Let's talk about the next usage, workstream scoping. So I said we've got about over 20. You're welcome, Helen. We got about 20 plus work streams. And the project managers came in with various levels of subject area knowledge. Some of them were great. They had been working this for a long time, or just that, or at least adjacent to it. Others, were new to the even health insurance. So it's it's you have a big project, you got to throw a lot of people on it, and the level of knowledge is everywhere. Now, each work stream has a team, of course, of a dozen or so underneath it. And those are just the usual suspects. Of course, each work stream has a lot. Now, what we did is we mapped the third level. Remember, that's the lowest level. A third level of each model, we mapped to a work stream. So each stakeholder journey touch point at the third level, each capability at the third level, each system at the third level, each platform implementation model at the third level got mapped to its work stream. So everything that was in scope got a work stream. And now that, so each work stream has many elements, and each model element has one and only one work stream. That, that is responsible for it. Of course, there's plenty of elements that may have other participants, multiple participants, but we had to pick one that was going to be responsible for it. Now you see in the bottom here, I have an example of the business system model. It's intentionally small. You're not supposed to be able to read it, but the coloration, I went and took, this is done in Visio, which you can, objects in Visio, you can link to Excel. So I dumped this to an Excel spreadsheet and then used data objects in Visio to color code them based on work streams. I was also able to put in some tags and some badges on them. So this is a visual representation of the business system model as mapped to the work streams. Actually on here too, but you can't read it, is the solution architects that are mapped to those two. But that comes later. That's a little bonus usage. Now, once we did this, I don't know, 9 months ago. This is what was, then they built their charters on this. The work streams could then build their charters, which really in a lot of ways was just a recitation of the elements that are in their scope. So that was how we made sure that the 20 work streams could run in parallel without tripping on each other, and they knew who was doing what, and so on and so forth. Now let's talk about components. I keep buzzing through these things. A component are the things that make up the platform. We have, now this could be a vendor, it could be an application, it could be a named database, it could be a piece of infrastructure. So it could be, these are the things, and I'll get into the numbering there, the CN numbers as well. So 3 of the 4 of these are fictional, and one of them is real. That would be the NSA data mining program called PRISM in the upper right. Now, composition of components. What is a component? It's any system, vendor, database that's going to be part of the platform, of the program's platform. I gave each one of these a component number. That's just an internal identifier, like CN123. The 1, 2, 3 is just the sequence. It's just the order that I entered them. It's got no other value than that, no other meaning than that. And then we have the component inventory. It's the big list of components. And I just checked, and I'm tracking 409 components in the database. Now, how do we use this? We use this a lot. This is part of the key thing to organize this. These CN numbers, we make sure that they're used in architectural diagrams, they're used in user stories, they're used in requirements, they're used in solutions. Basically, it just makes sure that we're all in sync on which one you're talking about and not worrying about any naming variations. Because I will tell you that there's a system that we're talking about that had one name back in 20 years ago, and it was been sold and rebranded several times, but they still call it the thing that it was 20 years ago. So you know all those, and sometimes figuring that out is harder than it's worth. So this way we know that GMC PrintNet that changed to Quadient Inspire is all the same thing. And it also enables a precise search within large libraries of documents. So if you're looking for a reference to CN123, well, honestly, you just do a find, and you'll find the CN123 pretty easily. I would point out, we track both the things that are going to be a part of the platform, yes, and we also track the things that are not going to be a part of the platform, the no's. Tracking the no's and actually writing down no is pretty important when it comes to a governance, for a governance process. People will ask, why didn't you do that? Why did you decide that? So we're keeping track of the no's too. Now, how we use this to create the composition. What is a composition? A composition is something that is intentionally created, intentionally designed. You think of a composed picture, and you've got, I don't know, a bowl of fruit right in the middle, and then flowers right behind it. It's an intentional way of laying things out and making sure that everything has its place. A musical composition is made up of multiple parts in an orchestra. Maybe 30, 40 distinct parts, all brought together. So our platform composition, we take each of the components and map them to the primary business capability. Now, each component, let's just say our membership system, there's lots of capabilities that use membership, use that data. But there's probably only one capability that maintains the data or owns that vendor relationship. They're in charge of making sure that the membership stays up to date. That's the mapping that we've done there. And we also map it to its business system model element, what type of system it is. Now, this we had this as best as we knew 9 months ago, and that also enabled people to do their charters, because we already had the work streams mapped to the capability models and system model, and now we map into the components. Well, we just told the work streams, follow the system model to your components. These are yours that you will be standing up. So the work streams are responsible for standing up the components in their system model. And the work streams are responsible for standing up the capabilities in their capability model. Now, hopefully, if you keep going down the components, you get the same list. It's not necessarily a given. There might be a bit of an offset. That's okay. You're responsible for everything is mapped. Everyone has a responsibility. You stand up, the work streams stand up those components that are in their business system model. Now, mostly that worked using the models. Sometimes it didn't, because we're human. Or one work stream got overloaded, or just needed to do some balancing. So that's this dotted line. I'll point at it. The dotted line in the between components straight to work streams. That's just an override because, you know, it happens. Now, what's the outcomes of having all this mapping done? Because this is a lot of work. That was 860 some elements that were doing mappings to work streams and components and getting them all tied together. But I'll tell you what, when we're done, we had tuned models for the scope of business for the line of business we were working on. We had the program scope for what was in scope and out of scope, clearly defined. You know, this doesn't matter, this matters double. We had 20 parallel work streams scoped in parallel so that we knew where they started and where someone else picked up. We had a platform composition mapped out. We actually know what systems we're using across the whole thing. And the next part, that ability to execute strong program governance. We know what's a part of our platform. We know we have said intentional yes or an intentional no, because I'm tracking at the CN number who recommended, which business unit recommended it, right, with a name. I'm tracking that the program has, the program leads have acknowledged and aligned to that recommendation, tracking that the business VP, the delivery, the technical delivery VP, and the program vice president have all agreed to it. And I'm tracking that it all went up to the program governance committee and was approved. Now that's a lot. So, but I guarantee you, we know exactly what's in and what's not in. And there's still plenty to be TBD, and there's always changes, but it enabled strong governance because we are tracking at, every component has a CN number. Now, how was this received and how is it used? From a reception standpoint, the model tuning was a great start on features. It wasn't the end of the feature list, and I can't say that we got them all right the first time, but we were more right than we weren't. So it really gave us a great start on that feature set. Now, work streams and versus departments, and there's a bit of a fight there. That we may be defining work stream in one way, but then the key department that's brought in may see things a little differently. So either we need to reshape the work stream, or we need to bring in more departments. Maybe that we need to bring more people in. So there was an initial kind of storming part of that aspect to it early on. But that's all right. We got things straightened out. Work streams, sometimes they drop a piece of the model on my doorstep and say, not mine. And they'd walk away and I'd have, okay, but I went and found whose it should be or who it would be next and kept things moving. Now, the models were both simultaneously very informative and overwhelming. And it kind of depended on your perspective and your background. It could either be informative, like, hey, this is great, now I know everything. On the other hand, oh my gosh, you're giving me 4 different models. You're giving me 20 elements of each that I'm supposed to do and try to figure out and how they work with everyone else. Now the overwhelming part is how it started. It's not how it ended. When things, the initial reception was sometimes a little overwhelming, but now we're all swimming. We all know our lane. Our lane has literally been defined. Now, governance likewise was simultaneously very important and a bit overwhelming too. So everyone agreed that it's super important to make sure that we're, saying yes or saying no to things. But when you're trying to say yes to about 350 elements, or no, I'm working over 400 elements right now, or components, 400 components right now. You'll have, I'm asking the technical VP to approve, to align to some small business vendor that they've never heard of. That vendor, that thing takes care of a very small portion of a very specific business. And the technical the VP doesn't know really what that is, and vice versa. we're asking a business VP or senior leadership and governance to say yes or no to Datadog or Sumo Logic, these things that are Auth0, small technical components that are deep underneath the covers. Do you say, yeah, does a business person or a senior leader say yes to GitLab or not? Well, they should. But anyways, that was part of it's a bit overwhelming. And but it was super important to do it. At the very least, they learned to have an appreciation for everything that went into this big platform. And finally, I got a lot of the models were simplified. They were too simple. They did, Todd, this doesn't really reflect reality. It's too high of a summary. And yeah, they're right. That's not the level of detail. You can't run the business based on these models, but the models help us organize. And that's all they had to do, was get us to organize and get us pointed in the right direction. So we did have to talk a lot about, go ahead and please fill in the blanks. Your business far better than we, but my job to know the business. My job was to organize 20 work streams and over 400 components, and to make sure that we didn't. So that's what we did. My job wasn't to tell you how to do your, how to type what, where. Now, usage. How did this turn out from a usage standpoint? We clearly defined program scope. We clearly defined our work streams. Our platform composition governance went very well. It's gone on very well. The architectural solutions that are coming out, the diagrams, all have CN numbers on them. I had a meeting on that just this morning. Do we need a new CN number or not? And we keep these things all in line so that that CN123 over here is the same as CN123 over here, which is the same as CN123 up in the requirements. And this is also helping with vendor impact and contracting. Because I have a huge list of everything, I have a huge list of everything. We can go through and say, hey, here's all the vendors we need to make sure we're working with. They may already exist, they may be brand new, but this is everything that's happening. I will also add in here that we used these models when we went to do the RFP, when we did, and there's some big RFPs that had to happen. We were able to carve out scope really nicely. It was pretty easy actually to say, here's your scope, and then parse it out to mini work streams to work different aspects of these vast RFPs, and any follow-ons that happened after that. So that's generally what happened. But now that I've got this model, we can do more with it. That's just the core. That's the main structure of it. So what we did more was when we got done with the RFPs, we realized we had gaps. So up in the upper left there, we made a list of the gaps that we had, and we mapped those to the work streams. We made a list of the future state intersections, other projects that are going on. The rest of the company doesn't stop. So things are going on that will hit us either now or later, or might hit us. So it might be a full miss, it might be a near miss. They might hit the very same subject matter experts that we want. We might have a SME collision. Or it might be a full-on, head-on system swap out, vendor swap out that we all have to figure out how we're going to work with. Excuse me. We had also, on the strategic approach box, for each business capability, we had previously gone through and looked at each business capability at the L2 level to say, what's our approach at Blue going to be? Do we want to, could this be differentiating for us? Is this something that would make us stand out in the market? If so, let's identify that this capability is differentiating, and let's make sure that we, hey, let's double down on that. Let's make this new business operating model and the tools that we use and the people that we hire and the way that we do it, let's make it reflect that we want it to be differentiating. There's other capabilities on the other side of that spectrum that maybe you just want to be good at. You don't have to be great. You want to be good. I'll just throw in paying payroll taxes. You want to do that well. You want to do that right, but it's not going to be differentiating for you in the market. Well, I guess if you don't do it, you're going to not be in the market. That would be differentiating. But other than the obvious negative, you want to pay payroll taxes well enough. You don't want to overspend on that. You want to do it just well enough. So just make sure, that helped organize us, make sure that we're putting effort where we wanted it to be, intentional effort. Now, over on the right, with the business system models, because I had a business system model, we can map our solutions, our architectural solutions to that business system model and say this, we had about 50 solutions because it's a big platform. This is the organization. This is how they are laid out. This is how they're going to, what's going to be on your diagram. And then we mapped about 15 architects to those 50 solutions. So now we have the solutions mapped to the business system model, the work streams mapped to the systems, the components mapped to the systems, and now we know exactly who's doing what. Each work stream probably is going to work with many architects. Each architect will work with many work streams, but hopefully the solutions themselves are coherent to themselves. Oh, and finally, at the bottom, I'm sitting in a lot of meetings about components, and I'm hearing a lot about, I need to send, this system needs to send this to this. A needs to send to B. Well, I started tracking that to say that, hey, these two components are related. They're related by a data feed, a technical integration from 1 to 2, or maybe it's bidirectional, or maybe this is replacing that one. There's several types of relationships that I've set up between components just to make sure I can map what happens where. Because if we're standing up such a big platform, if we're standing it up and it's all got to work right, we need to really understand how it's all laid out so that if something, well, we can do downstream impact analysis or upstream what happened analysis, and really understand our entire platform, have that schematic as we're building it. So these bonus usages, we're going to end up with a enterprise business operating model. I know which parts of the business capabilities are tied to which components. We have an enterprise architectural model, enterprise component model. I know how components are related to each other and which systems they support and which capabilities they support. We've already done the capability strategic importance, so we know that where we want to be and how we want to operate in certain areas to differentiate and to do things well, versus where do we want to make sure we do it right and get it done, but let's not double down like we are in the differentiating area. By going through this, it enables cost structure analysis too, because now we know what's literally in our platform. What are we bringing in? We're going to have more members. We're going to have more people using it. There's license costs. There's vendor costs. This enables us to really truly understand precisely what's in and what's out. And one of the other things, now we use Jira for our user stories. The Jira embedding, making sure that we have the CN numbers embedded in there, that we know which user stories, which epics, which stories map to what, and it really will help us make sure that we've got a good tie-in directly between our requirements and our stories and our sprints and our program increments all the way back to the components. Now, one of the things I found, lessons learned here, was I started doing all this in spreadsheets. Well, the spreadsheets got a little crazy. So I ended up putting it in, I ran to the arms of Microsoft Access. I'm a data geek, so it wasn't a big deal for me. But I have to do weekly downloads to Excel for the team and others to access. Most people aren't going to go writing access queries for themselves. So I had to download it to Excel. Not a big deal. And lately, the rapidity of change hasn't, the frequency of change has slowed down, so it's not quite weekly anymore. I've also been able to do data links to Visio models for the heat maps and tagging. If you haven't done, if you're using Visio to draw a heat map, is pretty cool. And if you use Sparks Enterprise Architect, there is a way to, behind the scenes, Sparks Enterprise Architect is Microsoft Access, and you can open it as Access. And then I hacked my data into there so that I can actually now I can visualize these relationships in Sparks Enterprise Architect, the UML modeling tool that it is, UML modeling tool that it is.
We have sorry, Todd, we have a question from somebody who's dropping, but I'm assuming they're going to go back and watch the tape and catch the answer to this question. So how long and how many architects did it take to build out the model of models? Which ones did you prioritize? Okay, so how this worked was the business capability model was developed by a team of architects back in 2014, 2015. The architects facilitated it. We talked to, but the business leaders, business directors and VPs were the ones who defined it. We facilitated it. So that was done back in 2014, 2015. That took a while. The stakeholder journey model was done back in the 2016-ish timeframe. And it used a local, I think it's local, well, it used a consulting company that walked through and did this for the corporation. The platform implementation model I developed myself based on lessons learned interviews that I did based on other prior operating model and platform transformations that we had done. And then, so I probably worked with about 20 people on that all told. And then finally, the system model. Well, I was an enterprise architect for 15 years. So me and a few other architects have been noodling on that for about 6 months while we spun this program up and got it going. And we knew the importance of having that model. So yeah, they didn't just pop into existence, but I will tell you that there's a lot of industry models that are very similar that you don't have to build your own necessarily. I've seen plenty that have come from the big consulting firms that could be work just fine for us if we decided to go with that. So I think the most important thing is that there's multiple perspectives on the same thing. No one model is perfect. So on the wish list, I wish I had considered bringing in the organizational model earlier. As I'm sitting in all those meetings, wouldn't it have been great to map that to the SMEs and the business owners and the departments that use it and stuff like that? Wouldn't have that been cool? Yes, it would have. And next time. And it would have been great to have a business process model, that value streams, the things that go end to end, the processes that cut across multiple capabilities, or maybe take time to develop. It's maybe it's shocking to you, maybe it's not, but developing a new health insurance product takes over a year. The amount of time it takes to develop these are long-lived things, and lots of systems and lots of people and lots of oversight that has to happen on new products. So there's that business process model is something that we're pondering. Lessons learned. Prior experience was huge. I've done this before. I've been an architect. I did enterprise models before. I worked on it. So I was able to take all that and use it again. Spreadsheets wasn't working. I mean, it's a way to start, but for all that, I ended up having to do Microsoft Access. And the data model for Microsoft, if you're wondering what the data model looks like, it looks like that. Throw some crow's feet on there, and you've got your data model. And honestly, it's impossible to say some things too many times. You know, just when you're working on this, what is this component? What is a model? What is an element? What is a mapping? Blah blah blah.
I missed something.
Excuse me a second. somehow my my Amazon device started talking back to me. It's a lot for one person. It's what you've seen is so far one personable. I've been able to drive it, but I've had to work at a program level. I've had to stay at the program level. I haven't been able to dive down into doing more work. So I've had to stay at a higher level and stay at this. And I have been asked to dive down and work on other stuff, and that it takes you away. I mean, this is a lot to maintain. So, whoops. The problem space, our effort was huge. We had multiple parallel tracks, a ton of stakeholders, roles, processes, vendors, systems, a mess of technical integrations and cross-departmental workflow. Maybe not a mess, a spider web of all of them. And it all has to work on day one when we go live. So I talked about today how we defined our overall scope, how we use business models and various models to define our overall scope, to map the work streams, to track vendors and systems, and ensure end-to-end coverage. And this model of models approach, this multiple points of view that just describing the same problem space, helped eliminate gaps, minimize overlaps, and identify where we needed to collaborate. And with that, and with 9 minutes and 15 seconds left, I thank you and look forward to any questions you have.